Hey guys, so this video will be a continuation of our discussions on foundations of engineering economy. So in this video, we are going to talk about cash flows. As we have mentioned in the previous module, cash flows are the amounts of money estimated for future projects or observed for project events that have taken place in the past. Okay, so pwedeng sa future siya or sa past yung cash flow natin. All cash flows occur during specific time periods, such as 1 month, every 6 months, or 1 year. So annual is the most common time period, annual or per year. For example, a payment of 10,000 pesos once every year in December for 5 years is a series of 5 outgoing cash flows. So from our perspective, since we are making a payment, so mababawasan yung pera natin, so this means that the cash flow is going out or outgoing. Okay? Again, from our perspective. Now next, an estimated receipt of 500 pesos every month for 3 years. So yung 500 pesos daw marireceive natin every month for 3 years. Now in this case, we have a series of 36 incoming cash flows. So every month for 3 years, that will be 36 total. And then incoming kasi marireceive natin yung pera. Now for uniformity, a plus sign indicates a cash inflow. Okay? So kapag papasok sa atin yung pera, syempre mag-increase yung cash natin. So that will be positive cash flow. Now cash inflows are the receipts, revenues, incomes, and savings generated by project and business activity. As long as papasok sa atin yung pera, that will be positive. On the other hand, a negative or minus sign indicates a cash outflow kasi mababawasan yung pera natin, kaya negative siya. Now, cash outflows are costs, disbursement, expenses, and taxes caused by products and business activities. So, in real life, these cash flows may take place at any time during an interest period. So, it might occur at any day of the month or any month of the year or at any hour of the day, no? So, itong cash flow na to, anytime. Because of this, it is assumed that all cash flows occur at the end of an interest period to make calculations easier. So yung ginagawa natin dito is we just assume that at the end of the interest period, doon nangyayari yung cash flow natin. So doon lumalabas or pumapasok yung pera at the end of the interest period. The end of period convention means that all cash inflows and all cash outflows are assumed to take place at the end of the interest period in which they actually occur. Now, when several inflows and outflows occur within the same period, the net cash flow, so yung net or the difference between the cash inflow and cash outflow, is assumed to occur at the end of the period. Okay, so next we are going to talk about a tool that will be very helpful if you are going to solve engineering economy problems. This tool is called the cash flow diagram. Now, the cash flow diagram is a very important tool in an economic analysis, especially when the cash flow series is complex. So with the help of the cash flow diagram, mavi-visualize natin yung bawat cash flow na nangyayari. Okay? So a cash flow diagram is a graphical representation of cash flows drawn on the y-axis with a time scale on the x-axis. Now, a typical cash flow diagram with cash inflows and outflows is illustrated by this figure. We can see here in our cash flow diagram, yung x-axis natin indicates the time. So in this case, naka-express siya in terms of years. So itong spaces in between the numbers in our x-axis, ito actually yung year natin or yung interest period. For example, ito yung year 1. At t equal to 0, ito yung start ng first year natin or ng year 1. And then at t equal to 1, ito naman yung end niya. Okay, so end ng first year natin. And then similarly, for our second year or year 2, itong t equal to 1, ito naman yung magiging start niya. Okay, so take note, yung t equal to 1, this is the end of the first year as well as the start or the beginning of the second year. And then itong t equal to 2, ito naman yung end ng second year natin. and then so on. So hanggang dito sa 5th year, dito sa 4, dito magsisimula yung 5th year natin. Okay? So dito yung start niya, and then dito naman sa 5, this will be the end of our 5th year. Again, take note of the time scale that you are going to use here. So yung gagamitin nyo dito is yung interest period nyo. So it can be year, pwede din months, weeks, days, and then so on. And if you notice, yung cash flows natin dito are indicated by upward pointing or downward pointing arrows. So for example doon sa t equal to 1 natin, we can see na meron tayong arrow upward. That means we have a positive cash flow, which means that it is cash inflow. Conversely, a down pointing arrow indicates a negative cash flow. So kung pababa, negative siya, ibig sabihin outflow or palabas yung pera. Now, it is also very important to label each arrow with the corresponding amount of money and mark it accordingly if the cash flow amount is unknown. Okay, so let us try to apply this cash flow diagram in this example. A civil engineer wants to deposit an amount P now such that she can withdraw an equal annual amount of A sub 1 equal to 20,000 pesos per year for the first 5 years, starting 1 year after the initial deposit, and a different annual withdrawal of 30,000 pesos per year for the following 3 years. Now, how would the cash flow diagram appear if interest rate is equal to 8.5% annually? Okay, so I suggest that you pause the video muna and then try to construct the cash flow diagram on your own. And then later, i-compare natin kung similar ba yung cash flow diagram na nagawa nyo. The perspective here is that of the civil engineer. So ganito yung magiging itsura ng cash flow diagram natin. First, we are going to draw the x-axis. So ito yung time scale natin. This is in terms of years. Now for our first cash flow, sabi doon sa problem, yung civil engineer daw will deposit an amount P now. Okay? So ngayon. So from our cash flow diagram, we set the present time or the now at T equal to 0. Mababawasan yung pera ng civil engineer kasi nga magde-deposit siya. Okay? So this means this is a negative cash flow. So papaba yung arrow natin. And then we will just write P as the amount of the deposit. Now, 1 year later or after 1 year, 1 year from her initial deposit, so dito, magwi-withdraw daw siya ng 20,000 pesos. So kapag nag-withdraw na siya ng pera, ibig sabihin, papasok or babalik sa kanya yung pera niya, madadagdagan yung pera niya. So this will be a positive cash flow. Ibig sabihin, this will be pointing upward yung arrow natin. And then, plano niya daw to withdraw 20,000 for the first 5 years. This withdrawal of 20,000 will happen 5 times. Again, each of these withdrawal will be equal to 20,000. So that will be A sub 1 equal to 20,000. We used A here for annuity. No? Hopefully, alam niyo na yon. We discussed that on our previous video. And then, sabi dun sa problem, for the following 3 years, after her first 5 initial deposits, mag-i-increase yung withdrawal niya into 30,000 per year. Here, we will have 3 withdrawals of 30,000 pesos. Okay, so pwede din gawin nyo, i-scale nyo din yung arrow. So, since 20,000 yung sa initial deposit natin, for the second deposit, since 30,000 siya, so mas mataas or mas mahaba yung arrow niya. And then, what you can do is you can also write the interest rate. So in this case, that will be 8.5% annually or 8.5% per year. Okay? So hopefully, same lang or similar lang yung cash flow diagram na nagawa nyo. Let us move on to our next example. A rental company spent $2,500 on a new air compressor 7 years ago. So again, yung cash flow natin, it could be in the future or in the past. So dito naman sa example na to, in the past, 7 years ago. The annual rental income from the compressor has been $750. The $100 spent on maintenance the first year has increased each year by $25. The company plans to sell the compressor at the end of next year for $150. Now construct the cash flow diagram from the company's perspective and indicate where the present worth now is located. So again, pause the video here muna and then try to draw the cash flow diagram on your own. As stated in the problem, the perspective here should be that of the rental company. Now take note that cash flow diagrams can be constructed for future and past cash flows. In this problem, bali yung gagawin natin, we will let the present time be t equal to 0. The incomes and cost for the past 7 years can be tabulated in a table. So, mas madali siya kung ilalagay natin sa table para nakasummarize. Now, here, as you can see, yung negative 7 natin, this is 7 years ago. So, ito yung first cash flow natin, no? So, yung rental company spent $2,500 on buying a new air compressor. Again, 7 years ago. Kaya negative 7 dito. So, yung cost natin, that will be $2,500. Therefore, the net cash flow, since wala pang income during that time, so this will be negative 2,500. And then for the next year, so meron ng income, nagkaroon na ng income yung air compressor natin. That will be $750. But take note that there will be a $100 maintenance cost. Okay, so this will be negative 100. Therefore, the net cash flow, so again net, that is simply the difference between the income and the cost. This will be positive $650. And for the following years, same pa rin yung income natin, that will still be $750, but the cost will increase by $25 per year. Therefore, for the next year, the cost will now be equal to $125. Therefore, yung net cash flow natin will now be $625. And then, so on. Again, yung present time natin dito, or yung now, is yung t equal to 0. Now, sabi dun sa problem, after 1 year, or 1 year from now, ibebenta daw yung air compressor for $150. Therefore, yung income for the next year will be equal to $750 plus $150. And then, syempre, meron pa din siyang cost. No? So, the cost will be negative $275. So, the net cash flow for the next year will be equal to $625. Okay? So, ito yung pwede nyong gawin. Pwede nyong i-tabulate muna yung mga cash flows before you construct your cash flow diagram. Pero kapag na-master nyo na yung paggawa ng cash flow diagrams, pwedeng diretso nyo nang gawin. Hindi nyo na i-tabulate pa yung mga cash flows. So, for this example, ito yung magiging itsura ng cash flow diagram natin. Again, yung present natin is t equal to 0. So, ito. And then, ito naman 1 year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, and then 7 years ago. At the beginning of the period, 7 years ago, dito yung first cash flow natin. And then for the next year, so actually pwede natin ilagay dito yung dalawang cash flows natin. So you can put here the income of $750. So that will be inflow or cash inflow. And then meron ding cost na $100. So cash outflow naman yon. So yung 750 natin, that is positive. So that will be pointing upward. And then yung 100 naman will be negative. So that will be pointing downward. And then similarly for the next year ulit, $750. So that will be positive income. And then yung cost, magiging $125. So medyo mas malaki siya compared with the previous year. You can write or draw your cash flow diagrams this way. No? So medyo madami ka lang ilalagay. Or you can just put the net cash flows na na-compute natin in our table. Okay? Again, sabi doon sa problem, i-indicate daw natin saan yung present time or present worth. So, again, we have assigned t equal to 0 as our present time. So, the present worth will be in here. Yung p natin, again, present worth, will be in this period. And, of course, don't forget to write the interest rate kung meron mang given. Okay? In this problem, walang binigay na interest rate. Pero kung meron siyang binigay, ilagay nyo rin dito sa cash flow diagram nyo. Okay, so next we are going to talk about the concept of economic equivalence. Now, yung tinatawag na economic equivalence is a combination of interest rate and time value of money to determine the different amounts of money at different points in time that are equal in economic value. Okay? So, hindi mo kasi pwedeng sabihin na, let's say, yung 100 pesos mo in the year 1990, so, hindi siya equal doon sa 100 pesos in the year 2020. Whether the economic value of this 100 pesos increases or decreases will be based on many factors. So, yung major factor dito is yung tinatawag natin na inflation. I know, narinig nyo na yan somewhere, no? So, i-discuss din natin yan later. Now, this idea of economic equivalence is a fundamental concept upon which engineering economy computations are based. As a further illustration, let's say if the interest rate is 10% per year, yung 1,000 pesos mo ngayon, today, no, at the present time, yung value niya 1 year later will not be equal to 1,000 pesos na. Okay, so actually mag-i-increase na siya based doon sa interest rate natin. So, this will be 1,000 pesos, yung pera mo ngayon, plus the interest. Okay, so that will be 1,000 times the 10% interest rate per year. This will be equal to 1,100 pesos. Ibig sabihin, if someone offered to give you 1,000 pesos today or 1,100 pesos 1 year from today, it would make no difference, okay, which offer you would accept. Yung dalawang offer na yon has an equal value, again from an economic perspective. However, the two sums of money are equivalent only to each other when the interest rate is 10%. Okay? So, if it is higher or lower yung interest rate natin, yung 1,000 pesos natin today will not be equal to 1,100 1 year from today. So, it will only be equal to 1,100 if 10% yung interest rate natin. Let us apply this concept in this example. Make necessary calculations to determine which of the following statements are true and which are false. Use interest rate equal to 5% annually. So for the first situation, the amount of $98 now is equivalent to a cost of $105.60 1 year from now. And then for letter B, a truck battery cost of $200 1 year ago is equivalent to $205 now. Again, pause the video muna and then try to solve the problem on your own. So for the first situation, the total amount accrued will be equal to the initial amount of money. So yan yung $98 plus interest. After 1 year, yung interest will be equal to 0.05 or 5% ng 98. Therefore, the total amount accrued will be equal to the initial amount of money plus interest, which is equal to $102.9. So as we can see, this is not equal to 105.6. Therefore, the statement is false. Now for the second situation, yung initial amount of money natin will be equal to $200. After 1 year, so meron siyang na-earn na interest. This interest again will be based doon sa initial amount natin. Therefore, the total amount accrued will be equal to 200 plus 0.05 or 5% of 200. So this will be equal to $210. Again, as we can see, this is not equal to $205 na sinabi doon sa statement natin. Therefore, that statement is also false. Okay, so next naman, pag-uusapan natin yung simple and compound interest. Now, we have used the terms interest, interest period, and interest rate previously when calculating equivalent sums of money for one interest period in the past and one interest period in the future. However, for more than one interest period, the terms simple interest and compound interest become important. First, pag-uusapan muna natin yung simple interest. No? So, sa simple muna tayo magsisimula. Now, simple interest is calculated using the principal only, ignoring any interest accrued in preceding interest periods. Now, the total simple interest over several periods is computed like this. Yung simple interest natin, again, this will only be based doon sa principal So this will be equal to the principal times the number of periods times the interest rate per period. Okay, so in terms of our notations, this will be I equal to P, yung principal, times N, the number of periods, times I, yung interest rate natin per period. Now, to calculate the total accrued amount or yung future amount ng pera natin, that will simply be equal to the principal plus all the interest na na-accrue or na-earn natin. This will be F equal to P plus I. So, future is equal to principal or the present plus the interest earned. Now, under simple interest, we have what's called ordinary simple interest and exact simple interest. For the ordinary simple interest, it is computed on the basis of 12 months of 30 days each. Therefore, yung total dito will be 360 days a year. Now, on the other hand, yung exact simple interest naman, so as the name suggests, no, exact, is based on the exact number of days in a year. So that will be 365 days for an ordinary year and then 366 days naman for a leap year. Now, if not mentioned in the problem, assume that ordinary simple interest is used. Okay? Make sure that when using the interest formulas, yung interest rate and number of periods natin have the same time period. So, for example, yung given interest rate is annual. So, yung ilalagay natin na number of periods will also be the number of years. Okay? If the interest rate is monthly, so we will write the number of periods in terms of months. Now, if not stated in the problem, usually the interest rate given is applied annually or per year. Okay, so let's take a look at our first example under simple interest. A financing company lent an engineering firm 100,000 pesos to retrofit an environmentally unfriendly building. Now, the loan is for 3 years at 10% per year, simple interest. How much money will the firm repay at the end of 3 years? Okay, so again, pause nyo muna yung video and then isolve nyo. Then i-compare natin mamaya. So the total amount to be paid at the end of 3 years will be equal to the principal plus all of the accrued interest during the 3-year period. So pwedeng i-compute muna natin yung interest na na-accrue during the 3-year period. Now the interest will be equal to P, principal amount, times the number of periods times the interest rate per period. So from the given doon sa problem, this will be equal to 100,000 times 3 for the number of years and then times 10% interest rate natin per year. So in total, the interest earned during the 3-year period will be equal to 30,000 pesos. Therefore, the amount or the total amount due after 3 years will be equal to the principal plus the interest. So that will be equal to 130,000 pesos. Okay, so for our next example, determine the exact simple interest on 500 pesos for the period from January 10 to October 28, 2020 at 16% interest. So the problem requires us to compute the exact simple interest. So we have to consider the exact number of days then. Now, the given interest rate, since hindi niya sinabi, no, we will just assume that it is applied annually. First, we need to calculate the total number of days during the period. So, the number of days will be summarized in this table. From January, for the month of January, that will be from January 10 to January 31. In total, that will be 21 days. Okay? So, bilangin nyo, no? I-check nyo. And then for the month of February, that will be 29 days. Kasi take note, 2020, that is a leap year. And then for March, April, May, June, July, August, September, the corresponding number of days then, the exact number of days during those months. And then for October, so that will be from October 1 to October 28. So including October 28, that will be 28 days for the month of October. So in total, we have 292 days. Now take note that the whole 16% interest will not be applied. Dahil nga, the interest period did not reach 1 year. No? So 292 days lang out of 366 days. Therefore, the interest will be equal to 500 times. So this will be, yung n natin will be 292 over 366. a fraction of a year lang, hindi yung 1 year talaga. And then times the interest rate of 0.16. Again, yung n natin dito is just a fraction of a year. So, hindi siya yung whole 1 year na interest period. In total, the interest earned during this period will be equal to 63.83 pesos. Okay, so finally, let us talk about compound interest. Now, in most financial and economic analysis, compound interest are used in calculations. So for compound interest, the interest accrued for each interest period is calculated on the principal plus the total amount of interest accumulated in all previous periods. Okay? So, pwede nating sabihin na yung compound interest is an interest on top of interest. Okay? So, hindi lang siya nakabase sa principal. Para ma-visualize natin, let's take a look at this table here. Makikita natin dito, we have several interest periods and then nakalagay din yung principal at the beginning of period and then as well as the interest earned during the period and the amount of the money or the total amount at the end of the period. So for our first interest period, yung principal or initial amount of money natin, let's just say that is P. So yung interest earned, if our interest rate is equal to I, yung interest earned natin during the first interest period will be equal to P times I. Therefore, the total amount at the end of our interest period will be equal to the principal at the beginning of the period plus the interest earned during the period. This will be P plus PI, or this will be equal to P times 1 plus I. Now, ito yung kaibahan ng compound interest. Okay? So, the end amount or the ending amount will be carried over and this will now be the principal at the next interest period. So, for our second interest period, yung principal natin doon will now be equal to P times 1 plus I, which is the ending amount in the previous period. The interest earned during the second period will be based on this principal. Okay, so hindi siya galing doon sa initial talaga na principal natin na P. So yung interest during the period will be based doon sa principal at the beginning of the period. So this will be equal to P times 1 plus I times I. And then in total, the amount at the end of the second interest period will be equal to, again equal to the principal at the beginning of the period plus the interest earned during that period. So this will be P times 1 plus I plus P times 1 plus I times I. Or if we simplify this, pwede natin i-factor out yung P times 1 plus I for each term. For the first term, divide natin ng P times 1 plus I, that will be equal to 1. And then for the second term, P times 1 plus I times I divided by P times 1 plus I. So we will only be left with I. Okay, this will be simplified to P times 1 plus I squared. And then, so on, no? So, for the next interest period, ito naman yung magiging principal at the beginning of the next interest period. Okay, so we have here up to nth interest period. Yung principal at the beginning of the n interest period will be equal to P times 1 plus I raised to n minus 1. And then, to obtain the interest, we will simply multiply this by I. And then, the total amount at the end of n period will be equal to P times 1 plus I raised to n. Okay, so kung nalilito kayo paano ito naging P times 1 plus I raised to n na lang, ito yung derivation niya. We have P times 1 plus I raised to n, yung 1 plus I raised to negative 1 natin, pwede natin siyang ilagay sa denominator. And then for the interest, this will be P times 1 plus I raised to n times I, and then divided by 1 plus I. Again, yung 1 plus I raised to negative 1, yan yung nasa denominator natin. And then, if we factor out P times 1 plus I raised to n over 1 plus I from both of our terms here. So, for the first term, i-divide natin ito. That will be equal to 1. And then, for the second term, i-divide natin ito. That will be equal to I. So, 1 plus I, magka-cancel out lang. Therefore, we are left with P times 1 plus I raised to n. Take note, ito yung amount at the end of the interest period. Therefore, this will be our future value or future worth. Pwede nating ilagay as F. Again, F will be equal to P times 1 plus I raised to n. Okay, so let us apply this to an example. If a company sets aside $1 million now into a contingency fund, how much will the company have in 2 years? So if it does not use any money and the account grows at a rate of 10% per year, the given interest rate is per year. Therefore, yung gagamitin natin na interest period or yung ilalagay natin doon sa N will also be the number of years. Now, using the equation for the compound interest na na-derive natin kanina, that will be F equal to P times 1 plus I raised to N. Again, isa-substitute lang natin yung mga given values. For the principal, we have 1 million. And then I, our interest rate, that will be 10%, so 0.10. And then yung N natin will be the number of periods, that will be 2 years. In total, the future amount of our money will be equal to $1,210,000. Okay, so napakadali lang, ano? Next example, we have, so ito, if interest is compounded at 20% per year, how long will it take for 50,000 pesos to accumulate to 86,400 pesos? Yung hinahanap sa problem na to is yung number of periods. How long daw? Okay, so yung N, ito yung magiging unknown natin. From the formula of our compound interest, F equal to P times 1 plus I raised to N, yung future amount ng pera natin, okay, so yung total accumulated amount natin, dapat daw 86,400 pesos. So this will be equal to the principal, or the initial amount of money, which is 50,000 pesos, times 1 plus the 20% interest per year, 0.2 raised to N. N yung unknown natin. Now, solving for the value of N, we will obtain N equal to 3. Take note, yung interest rate natin is per year. Therefore, the period that we will obtain here will also be in terms of years. So, we have 3 years as our final answer. Okay? So, baka malito kayo kung simple interest ba or compound interest yung gagamitin sa problem. Don't worry, no? Kasi kung simple interest yung ipapagamit niya, sasabihin niya talaga doon sa problem. Simple interest of 5% per year, ganon. Meron kang makikita na simple interest na word. Ngayon kung wala, you should assume that it is compound interest. Okay, so that's it for this video, guys. See you on the next one.